The president of Niger has demanded that French government must pay in cash the money they looted in Niger for the past 65 years. Yes, that's just the major breaking. And they are not playing. They are not playing about it. Now, let me read. Nigerian military leader Abdurrahmani Shani has recently said French government will have to pay a compensation to Nigerians in cash for that they have been looted for the past 65 years in mineral of the country. The Nigerian head of state stressed that currency is a sign of sovereignty and that they are engaged in a process of recovering their total sovereignty. Do you understand that? Currency is a part of sovereignty and they are engaged in total recovering their sovereignty. That's a huge statement. We have said it and we must open the cupboard of the recent history of African states. Take out all the files, dust them off, analyze them, evaluate them, and decide for the interest of our people, he said. You see, I love these leaders we have in Sahel because this is what we call leadership. This is what we call leadership. Eye for eye, right? You see, what France has done to these nations is deplorable. I mean, the kind of thing that France has done, like if you check very well, if you open the cupboard of what France has done to these nations in Sahel region, it's too much. Like, it's too much. I don't even know if France can be able to pay back for the things they have done there. What if Burkina Faso demands that France pay them what they have done? Would they be able to do it? What if Mali demands? What if Haiti demands? What of Ethiopia? If all these nations comes together and demand that the French government pay them for what they have done, will France be able to pay? Would there be France to pay them? This is huge. This is really, really huge. This is just what I want, to be honest. This is just, I want them to come for them. I want them to organize themselves and come, because I've been asking, when is the world going to open their eye and talk about what France has been doing to these nations? When is even African Union, ICC, different organization in the world, why are they closing their eyes to the atrocities done by France to these nations? Why is there no organization talking about it? Why is the ECOWAS not talking about it? Why is African Union not talking about it? This has been going on and the thing is that even France has not even given up. They are going back. Even when they have been chased out, they are trying the way possible to get back to Niger, to get back to the Sahel region. I mean, who in their sane mind is seeing this thing and not talking about it? This is bad. This is deplorable, right? And I'm just waiting when the world will open their eyes and talk about these things. France, they have to pay. The French government have to pay back for what they have done, because there is no justification to this thing that you people have done to this nation. This nation have suffered enough and they demand their rights. They demand their sovereignty back, right? Now, I want you to listen to this. This is what the Italian minister said about France.
This is called the CFA franc. It is the colonial currency that France prints for 14 African nations. This is a child who works in a gold mine in Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is one of the poorest nations in the world. Despite having gold, France prints colonial money for Burkina Faso, and in exchange, demands that 50% of everything Burkina Faso exports ends up in the French treasury coffers. What this child crawls into a tunnel to extract ends up mostly in the coffers of the French state. So, the solution is not to take Africans and move them to Europe. The solution is to free Africa from certain Europeans who exploit it and allow these people to live off what they have. Emmanuel Macron has called us disgusting. And here, the Italian press says, since Macron said that we are irresponsible shame. The responsible ones, Manuel and Macron, are those who bombed Libya because they were annoyed that Italy had a privileged relationship in the energy field with Gaddafi, exposing us to the migration chaos in which we find ourselves.
Sono I francesi che mandano la gendarmerie a rispedire indietro qualunque immigrato tenti di passare il confine a Ventimiglia.
Disgusting are those like France who continue to exploit Africa by printing money for 14 African nations on which they apply seigneurage.
Vomitevole è chi buono, che lo vuoi tu? Vomitevole.
Making children work in the mines extracting raw materials.
Continua a sfruttare l'Africa, stampando moneta per 14 nazioni africane sulle quali applica il signoraggio, facendo lavorare bambini nelle miniere, estraendo materie prime come accade in Niger, dove la Francia estrae il 30% dell'uranio che gli serve a far camminare le centrali nucleari e il 90% dei nigerini vive senza elettricità. Non ci venire a fare lezioni, Macron, perché l'Africa scappa da voi. E la soluzione non è spostare gli africani in Europa e liberare l'Africa da certi europei. Non accettiamo lezioni.
In my speech at Atreju is a demonstration that takes place in the month of September. It ended up on the websites of a series of Pan-Africanist associations. Let's say they are African patriots who fight against the CFA franc. In my speech, I mentioned the problem of Macron's France and the CFA franc. There is another interview of mine on at least 2 television programs. We went 20 miles to do a demonstration when Macron brought back the CFA franc, for which, I mean, there is a historian who speaks, if Macron will call her to go to Paris first to me, and then to Macron. Now, these CFA francs, I have them here with me. I have also studied a little. They are used by 14 African countries that I am going to read: Cameroon, Central African Republic, Congo, Gabon, Chad, Benin, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Niger, Senegal, and Togo. Perfect. I say these countries send few migrants because we have done some calculations. The bulk of migrants in Italy come from Tunisia, Eritrea, Iraq, and Nigeria. The Ivory Coast is the only one that sends us a total of 1,064 migrants out of 23,370, but it is 8th on the list of countries. So are we really sure that the point is this, or is it instead a way to identify an enemy who is then a very good enemy for the sovereigntists because Macron is really the anti-province par excellence? Perfect. I say these countries send few migrants because we have done some calculations. The bulk of migrants in Italy come from Tunisia, Eritrea, Iraq, and Nigeria. The Ivory Coast is the only one that sends us a total of 1,064 migrants out of 23,370, but it is 8th on the list of countries. So, first point, when I brought up the CFA franc, I did it in response to the fact that Macron had called us disgusting because we were making policies to control our migratory flows. So maybe it is worth reminding this nice gentleman that before giving such lapidary judgments towards his European partners, he should remember how France behaves towards these people. You can't tell others that they are not welcoming enough when you print money for 14 nations and apply seigneurage. Because what Mauritine didn't explain to her before, when he told us that it is only a system of exchanges, is that this left, which is there defending neo-colonialism, is a reminder of what the Italian left is today, because I shudder in front of the articles in Repubblica. Today, Merlot in Republica calls me the Queen of Catona because I allowed myself to explain that in Africa there's still a neo-colonial problem. Because what does Merlot care? That in his Roman, Italian, and Parisian living rooms, this problem doesn't exist. I'll go and explain it to the associations of Africans who flee, who denounce, and who burn the CFA franc in the square for what it produces. France is a benefactor in Africa, Meriton told us. Let me put it this way. In exchange for this exchange system, France demands that these nations pay into the coffers of the French treasury the equivalent of 50% of their exports. In Burkina Faso, I found out that $1 billion is more or less equal to 10 billion. In Burkina Faso, excuse me, where are the children? I showed the other evening a photo of a child. I will show it to you too. This is a child who works in a gold mine in Burkina Faso. They use children to work in these gold mines because they can get into the tunnels better, okay? 50% of the gold that this child enters a tunnel to extract ends up in the French treasury. Now, does that seem like a normal thing to you? And look, don't come and tell me, and I'll tell you two other very quick things. But no one from these nations. But what does that mean? It's obvious that if a Nigerian escapes from Nigeria, if he had a rich Senegal next to him, maybe he wouldn't come to Italy. GFAT asked off the air about the 10 billion because I had read this thing. He answered me that the 10 billion are not things that could be used by Africans to invest in roads, bridges, infrastructures, but they are the reserves that every country must have. So France tells them, you have these reserves, I'll keep them for you to maintain a stable currency so that it does not fluctuate continuously, and for your economy, it is a great good. Give me a break. Let's do it like this. Okay, then I'll tell Meriton that we do it like this. Since the French are benefactors with their CFA francs, let's say that now we do it with the European Central Bank, what France does. Let's see if France is in agreement.
Nel 2015 il Dipartimento di Stato americano pubblica 3.000 mail, se ricorda, che erano indirizzate all'allora segretario di Stato americano Hillary Clinton.
Mirta, there is another thing I would like to discuss with you today, which I find very interesting. What does the CFA franc have to do with the migration issue? And is France a benefactor or merely interested in the CFA franc? Because they are telling us that France does not gain anything from it.
For example, the case in France. A judge somewhere in rural areas of France, one of the village judges somewhere, decides that he's going to indict leaders in Rwanda and talks about all kinds of things that happened in Rwanda and, blames Rwanda and so forth. At the same time, there is a bad history between us where actually during the genocide, there are many things that happened that involved some people from France. So now, instead of actually Rwanda having a case against France, a judge in France indicts leaders of a country, military leaders, political leaders, a whole list of about close to 20. And they want to indict them to France to be tried for things that they say they did, which are also completely fabricated. But because of that bad history we have had, they wanted to do that. And we said, this is not possible. We said, if you are doing that, and they called it universal jurisdiction that give the powers to these judges. And we said, okay, if actually your judges have powers to do that, to indict people in Rwanda or elsewhere, and take them to the courts in France, if it is universal, then our judges should have the authority to actually indict your people and bring them to the courts of law. So the question therefore was, how does it become universal when it is just one way? So this was the whole process. In fact, it was the same case with the one I mentioned of Spain, which you have since, on the same basis of argument, actually we have resolved this one. The one with France is still outstanding, and we have said, no way, you are not going to try anybody from here unless we try those who have cases against actually that were committed here. In fact, the people they want to try in Rwanda did not even are not said to have committed crimes in France. They are accusing them of committing crimes in Rwanda. So how about those of your country that actually committed crimes in my own country that you don't allow me to try? So it was a basis of fairness.
All right, I would love to know what you think about this. See you in the next video.